Welcome to Town Hall, folks. Tonight is a regular town board meeting. We do have a busy agenda. The town clerk is not sitting here right now, so we're not going to take attendance. Is Charlie out there somewhere?
We can't take attendance?
All
Yeah,
right.
you can take
I'll take, Paul, you want to take attendance?
Sure.
All right.
Councilman Troy. Councilman Divity.
Here.
I'm here. Councilman Batari. Here. Supervisor Stewart.
Here.
Stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we do that, I want to read this out. Today is June 14th. It's Flag Day. And I think this here is something that was written by, declared by Mario Como back in 1985 on June 14th. Just to read this out. Symbolism of the flag of the United States of America may be interpreted in many ways, but first and foremost, it is a constant reminder of our representative form of government, deriving its powers from the consent of the governed, is the preserver of individual freedom and personal liberty. The oppressed from all lands who emigrated to our shores have viewed our flag as a beacon of hope for a better way of life. Our flag has been raised over foreign soil, wholly and solely as a signal of liberation of millions from the bondage of dictators and tyrants. Here at home and around the world, our flag marks the final resting place of our fellow citizens who fell in battle in defense of human rights. New Yorkers should take note that our flag was first flown from Fort Stanwix, the site of the present city of Rome in New York. It first came under fire 3 days later at the Battle of Orangetown. The annual observance of Flag Day is a highly laudable endeavor and is appropriate to designate a special day to display our flag today, and that's today, especially what's happened in the last few days. You know, this is a great country, and let's stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And if we could also have Esther Baitler lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in honor of her birthday coming up this month.
Hey, happy birthday.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Dennis. Charlie, we took attendance, so we're all set with that. Everybody's here. And I just want to note, you know, while I was looking that way and I had my back to this room, I could feel everybody was saying the pledge at the same time, and that level of unity in the town is a precious thing. And while we have our debates and sometimes issues separate us, I think that we're all together in the most important ways. I wanted to make two quick announcements at the top of the agenda. One is, one thing I think we're all together on is trying to keep United Water, or Suez now, from jacking up rates on ratepayers in a way that goes beyond what's fair. Advocating to the Public Service Commission of the state of New York to make sure that ratepayers are heard is one of the things among many that the town does. Those hearings are coming up this week, and I encourage everyone to participate. It's easy to find out when and where they are. They're on tomorrow and Thursday. There's one at RCC and there's one at Stony Point. I encourage you to visit the websites and come out and express yourself in favor of their conservation and plugging of leaks and pipes, and against excessive rate increases to pay for the failed, unnecessary desalination plant that, thank goodness, we were able to repel. So that's one hearing. The other hearing that's coming up, I don't have the date yet for it, but it's also important, is that the State Department of State is going to be holding hearings in mid-July on the topic of, this kind of follows on the do not knock policy, on excessive real estate solicitation and the potential declaration of cease and desist or prohibition zones. It's an exciting, relatively unused policy that I think we should have a way in at those hearings when they come up. I have further information about those hearings, and there'll be a meeting actually on Monday evening at 7 o'clock on a neighborhood level if anybody's interested in learning more about how those hearings are going to work. Point being to come out if there are stories in the community about people who've been pestered or overly bothered by real estate solicitation when their houses aren't even for sale, to make sure they come out and tell their stories at the public hearings that the state is going to hold. Our state representatives have asked those hearings take place, and I'm going to try to get one to take place in Orangetown as well. Right now, they're probably going to be at RCC. So those are two hearings coming up. Encourage you to participate in those. Tonight, we have a hearing on our parks policy and the amendment, or rather the policy for a change of the town code related to parks, which is 7A, which is in the agenda for tonight. It has been the subject of discussion, and a hearing that was started a few weeks ago will be continued tonight with a possible vote following that and any amendments that might be made or not, depending on how the conversation goes. But before that, we want to start with our usual public comment period. But at 8 o'clock, we're going to cut over to our parks hearing, I think. Oh, do we have two? No, I think we're just setting a date for the other hearing. Am I right about that? We have one. Yeah, this is the town parks hearing. But let's start with our public comment period. I'll make a motion to open the public comment period. I need the sign-in sheet. Could someone help me out with that if it's still on the table outside? People have a last chance to sign up. Thank you. Maybe Watson's getting it. That's great. John, I'm sure he'll be here shortly. We'll go through the sign-in sheet, and then by a raise of hands, you're welcome to comment further. And just be aware that we have a scheduled public hearing on the parks policy, which was a separate sign-in sheet. And it's almost always the case that people might write their name on one and mean the other. So we'll start with general public comment, like we always do at regular town board meetings, and then we'll cut over to the park policy change hearing. And if anybody's mixed up between the two, you can always just raise your hand. Charlie, do you have those lists? You know, while Charlie is getting that list, why don't we take just a moment to have a moment of silence in honor of the victims of the mass killing down in Orlando. If you would join me just for a moment, that would be great, in their memory. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have about 11 people signed in, and then if we get through those before 8 o'clock, we'll do raise of hands. Starting out with Ruth Weber. Ruth, are you here? Welcome. And for those who haven't joined us here before, we have a podium, a microphone. We have a little clock on the wall. We hope people can express themselves concisely. And if you're repeating something someone else says, just say, you know, what the other guy said, I agree with. Welcome to Town Hall, Ms. Weber.
To Supervisor Stewart and the Orangetown Town Board, I must preface our opinions by saying that if any of the facts are wrong, it is because the Town Board did not see fit to hold a public meeting here in the Town Hall with advance notice, as it well should have. The sellout or giveaway by this board of our hard-won, dearly paid for, and greatly cherished Clausen Mountain Park's greenbelt is nothing short of infamy. Infamy 1. Apparently, for weeks, a mountain biking club of New Jersey has been cutting trees and slashing paths in Blauvelt Park in preparation for a racing jamboree with New York City clubs across the entire park range. Remember, Orangetown taxpayers must obtain permits to take down even a dead tree. Their jamborees will begin at Nike Park, a highly contaminated Superfund site with buried barracks containing drums of DDT, chemicals, used oil, and other toxic materials which the DEC mandated as a not-to-be-disturbed area. The fractured diabase rock base would allow toxins to leach into the groundwater, contaminating wells and eventually the Sparkill Creek and Hudson River. The park's north spur, contaminated with lead and asbestos for a 50-foot radius around the radar platforms, is likewise off-limits to disturbance. Infamy 2. In spite of the stark warning of the 275-acre brush fire on Clausen Mountain about 2 years ago that jumped the road in 2 places on Tweed Boulevard and took a heroic 2.5-day effort by firemen from Rockland and Westchester to contain, The town has made no effort to provide hydrants to protect the park and surrounding residents from a future human and environmental catastrophe. Yet they have time to network with Rambo mountain biking racers. Orangetown is obliged by charter to protect the safety of its citizens first. The aggressive mass mountain bikers activity, will exacerbate the very real fire danger. Infamy 3, our town and other park officials apparently blessed this clandestine mountain bike venture a year ago, holding private meetings with non-taxpayers, non-residents, without public announcement or the courtesy of informing Upper Grandview or Pleasant Mountain associations, who initiated, bolstered with endless effort, and helped fund the park acquisitions to complete the historic Greenbelt. Infamy 4, the liability possibilities and cost to the taxpayer are horrendous. Consider the traffic of the Jubilee racers on narrow mountain roads, the potential for vandalism or break-ins in surrounding homes, the danger of serious or fatal accidents as bikers hurtle over rocks, dead trees, and ravines, and even of snake and animal bites. Liability considerations led the Rockland County Park
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
withdraw cooperation, we understand. May I finish in light of the fact that I'm speaking now for our 500 members and not just as a single person?
If other people have comments, I'm sure they'll follow up, but I would ask you to close your comments as quickly as possible.
May I finish?
Yes, please, finish your thought, but
I
we have a lot of
very
people in the
little-
room
I
tonight.
have very little. May I?
And we do appreciate your being to the point and allowing others a chance to
I
speak
will.
as well.
The fortuitous confluence of land acquisition opportunity and the foresighted generosity of some unusual conservation and civic-minded individuals that made the Clausen Mountain Blauvelt Park's Greenbelt a reality, and its entire ecosystem, wildlife habitat, migration routes, endangered native plants, and animal life, nesting birds, soil stabilization, and water retention is now in jeopardy. The parklands have always been intended for and are best suited to walking, hiking, picnicking, passive activities that show respect for and leave intact their fragile ecosystems, which once damaged can never be restored. They provide beauty and elevate the mind and soul. Amend park regulations if you must, but preserve God's wonderful creation for us and as a heritage for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Mandel.
Yeah, good evening, Supervisor Stewart and members of the Town Board. For the record, Michael Mandel, the resident of Pearl River. Just to echo what Ms. Weber just said, if this in fact is occurring before anything is decided, there should be public hearings in the town so that everybody here, the taxpayers, have their thoughts and wishes put into it.
You know, Michael, if you want me to clarify the matter now, I'm happy to do that. It'll take a minute. Yeah, well, we'll
Thank
go
you.
back to the 3, because if you start
Okay.
pausing this thing, you'll lose track of it.
All right.
Just on the mountain bike question, the current status is that there's a group of local residents who are affiliated with mountain biking who bike regularly in the park system. There's state, county, and town. They have gotten permission from the state of New York, the state parks, to do work in Blauvelt State Park, managing the trails, building some trails and things like that. They have not received any permission or been made any promises as far as town land. They do have, and presumably will have, a proposal, related to that. They're actually going to be speaking to the OPDAC committee tomorrow evening if anybody's interested in participating in that. It's down at the Greenbush Auditorium building in the fire inspector's office. I think it's at 7 or 7:30. Sorry. Oh, OPDAC's meeting here? Okay, usually it meets down there. So tomorrow at 7:30. So there's a bike group. They're making proposals. They have an agreement with the state. There was a meeting at Blauvelt Library. Those things are true. Questions about toxicity and Superfund sites, fires, and other things are certainly of concern. They may be related. I don't know that they are specifically. But in any case, just so you know, our town has a very specific process for making decisions, and that involves public discussion, and if town board resolutions are necessary, they're on an agenda, and they're discussed, and everybody has a chance to weigh in, as well as moving things through our volunteer committees so that people have a chance to see what's going on. So that's the status of that. I'm not going to take, we're not going to get into a back and forth, but I'm giving you information. You're welcome to follow up with questions from me or for our park superintendent or for the mountain bike group themselves, or come tomorrow night. But, you know, to answer your question, you know, every bit of hypothetical town business is not subject to mass emailing or mailings or knocking on doors and trying to let everybody know. So there are items that come up, they are discussed in an appropriate way, and decisions are made in a way that's publicized, and I look forward to finding out more about it myself. Now, would you like to make a comment related to that or go on to a different topic?
No, I'll comment on, then I'll go on to my main topic.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. I appreciate because it sounded like she had some questions, and we can put that one
The
aside
thing
for a
is,
minute.
if anything, it could have been put on the website. It could have been, you know, just put in there with everything else that's on the website for people to see. Or it could have been part of an email sent out. We get quite a few emails from the town. That's what the system is for. Just put it out there so people know there's a meeting tomorrow night. And if they want to come, they can come. If they can, they will. You know, this way you have advance notice so you don't make other arrangements for things. But
There's a Facebook group, Friends of Blauvelt Park, and the stakeholders are well
don't use
informed.
Facebook,
Right,
okay?
Thank
Nor
you.
Twitter or any of those other things.
Appreciate that.
You get into problems when you do that. Okay. The reason I came tonight, the supervisor and members of town, Cherry Brook Park in Pearl River. In that park, there's a building that contains a men's and a women's restrooms. That building, over the years, has been used for, well, kids using drugs. In fact, several years back, I forget when, the kids were so stoned there that they dropped nickel bags, $5 bags for those who don't know what it means, on the ground that were full, which I called the Orangetown Police Department, gave it to them. We've had drinking there all the time. You have now recently, and I know the police have passed by, we've had one young man who was homeless living there, another couple that were chased by the dog walkers in the morning. The dog walkers do accomplish stuff. So this building, when opened a couple of times, the interiors were destroyed within several days. The building is of no use. It's probably never going to be opened or used again. It's time, because of the overhang. Now, this building has an overhang, so it shelters people from the rain, snow, whatever else. It's a place where you can hide in the back. It's very dark. There's bushes on one side and private homes behind it. The other side, also overhang, covered. You see places, and I think they tried to set it on fire one time over the years. So it's time maybe we decide that this building should be taken down. And while we're doing that and making it a green area, maybe it's a good time to get rid of the old skating ring in town, as our Parks Commissioner, I was talking to him earlier, would be a great idea. That the ground in there is cracked. My grandson, in fact, broke his foot trying to scooter ride in there because of the broken ground. Also, water sits in there, water that's breeding ground for mosquitoes, and that's a health issue. So maybe it's time that we look at that park, rip the building down, rip the skating ring down, put some green grass in there, some trees and some benches, and bring it back to the way it was. So for all intents and purposes, it makes it safer for everybody, because that park is used by young children who go in there by themselves to play basketball. Young women walk through there. It's a dangerous condition, so I would appreciate if we thought about it, did something. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Allison Sullivan. How you doing?
Hello again. My name is Allison Sullivan. I live in Blauvelt. I'm here again to state my concerns about the noxious odor that Aloof plastic bag manufacturer emits on Glenshaw Street in Orangeburg, New York. Today, I was reading through the permit the DEC has given Aloof. Item 3.1 states, "No person shall cause or allow emissions of air contaminants to the outdoor atmosphere of such quantity, characteristic, or duration which are injurious to the human, plant, or animal, or to the property, or which unreasonably interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property, notwithstanding the existence of specific air quality standards or emission limits. This prohibition applies but is not limited to any particulate, fume, gas, mist, odor, smoke, vapor, pollen, toxic, or deleterious emission, either alone or in combination with others. I really don't get it. Am I reading it wrong? Doesn't it say they are not allowed to be emitting this odor? Aloof runs 6 days a week, 24 hours a day, and sits behind a preschool and college. It is less than half-mile to homes and feet away from a walking trail. In one part of Aloof's building, they melt at high temperatures, high-density and low-density polyethylene pellets and blow it through extruders to make plastic bags. In another part, they recycle defective, rejected plastic materials to make their own pellets, then to make plastic bags. They have grown from 100,000 square feet to 500,000 square feet in a residential area. They have grown from 8 extruders to now 80. There are many unknowns. What materials are they recycling to make their pellets, and how are they regulated? Are they melting material with print on it that could potentially have lead in it? We don't know. The first inspection after a long time, the DEC gave Aloof a warning notice for not keeping the records in satisfactory order. This was March 15th, 2016. This means we don't know how well they are maintaining their filters and emission stacks. If they are not maintaining their records on when they clean and change the filters, how do we know they are cleaning them at all? When was Aloof inspected before this? Not sure. From what I could tell is when Aloof got their permit from the DEC back in 2013 with no expiration date. Whose responsibility is it to make sure companies who have an environmental impact in Orangetown are doing what they are supposed to be doing? Is it the building department? Are they qualified to inspect what Aloof is doing? At one time, the Rockland County Health Department had an air division. It was rescinded in 2014. While the health department was involved, they received numerous complaints about Aloof and were working on doing something about it. From what I have read in the records, complaints occurred way before 2010. From what I can tell, Aloof has had freedom to do whatever they wanted after 2014 when the air division was taken away from the Rockland County Health Department. This year, from March 11th to April 26th, there have been 41 odor complaints to the DEC about Aloof. From April 26th until now, I don't have the DEC records, but I will as of June 20th. This I do know. I have complained 15 times from April 26th until now to the DEC in the town. Mostly I smell it from my home, but also from Tappan Zee High School, St. Catherine's Preschool, and Dominican College. These complaints are during normal times when we are awake and busy in our day. What about at night when we are sleeping? How do we know that they are not doing harmful practices at night? Are there inspections at those times? How many complaints until something is done?
Thank you for that comment. It's excellent. I'll be able to provide a little bit of an update on the Aloof situation when we finish with public comment. Councilman Divany just asked me to do it now. I'll give you the 2 or 3 bullet points. Number one, it's absolutely a concern, and residents are to be thanked for making those reports to the DEC and the building department. Number two, the DEC and the building department are overseeing Aloof. Aloof has hired an independent engineer. The engineer will make recommendations about how to improve the odor control system, and the installation of those recommendations will be overseen by the DEC. So that's the plan in effect. The town has also issued an order to Aloof to make an application reviewing and updating the descriptions of its machineries for that review by the building department. So that's just a brief update on that. It is a noxious odor, and there's been some good work on that so far, but it's clearly not finished yet. But moving on, Chris Dunnigan. Oh, good.
Good evening. Chris Dunnigan from Pearl River. In the past, we've discussed active solicitation of residents in Orangetown at their homes by real estate agents, utility companies, and other solicitors. Tonight, I'd like to talk about a different type of passive solicitation, the posting of signs on your utility poles in Orangetown. If you drive through just about any major intersection, down a heavily traveled road or stoplight, you'll see brightly colored signs asking you to buy your home for cash, cars for cash, donate your car, garage sales. You even see notices from the town layered on top of each other in front of some places. Often these signs end up being garbage in the street that needs to get picked up by residents or the highway department, what have you. From my own reading and understanding of the town code, these signs are illegal. I won't read the whole thing, but town code says no sign shall be placed on any utility pole except for utility identification or similar purposes. And I can give you guys the where that is in the town code later. When calling to report a number of signs that were attached to poles near my home, I was informed that even though this was expressly prohibited by that code, there was another code described in a different chapter that allowed signs to be up past a certain date. So whenever it was posted, 7 days or 30 days, depending on the type of sign. So I'd like to get some clarification from the board, which one of these is the enforceable ordinance? And furthermore, I'd like to recommend that the town board take this up and make a law that simply states nothing can be attached to utility poles whatsoever other than things required to provide the utility to residents. For example, Saddle River, New Jersey has a similar law. It shall be unlawful to post or affix any sign, advertisement, notice, paper. They cover all their bases there. I hope the board can take this change up proactively and update our town code to preserve the beauty of our town. And once this happens, or enforce this strictly, right? So when things go up on poles, they get taken down quickly. When people report things to the code enforcement, they get taken down quickly. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dunnigan. Well said. Guy Gervasi, are you here?
Hi, my name is Guy Gervasi, and my address is the Hollows of Blue Hill. Presently, I'm president of the Board of Managers of the Hollows, and I'm here to discuss our detention pond problems. First, some history. During the summer and fall of 2015, the board at the Hollows have kept asking the developer for our detention pond drawings and the annual maintenance work that's been done. The developer told us to go to the town. I personally foiled the town and asked Bruce Peters to obtain these files. They couldn't be found. In early December, our lawyer sent a formal letter to John Edwards asking the town to enforce the developer's responsibilities with respect to these maintenance records and drawings and to not accept the developer's notice of termination on the detention pond. Our board then hired an engineering company to review the construction of our detention pond, and a report was issued in January. It stated that in many instances, the detention pond was not built to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation standards. This report was sent to Magrino, Moran, Dean, Giardello, supervisor, plus was sent to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the developer. Since January, our lawyer has continued to talk to Bruce Peters to see if the developer has done anything to address our problems and to obtain the assurances that the town has not accepted the developer's notice of termination. Up through June, Peters told us the developer had done nothing, and the town has not accepted the developer's notice of termination. All of a sudden, when our lawyer called Peters last week, he received an email that said all inquiries about the Hollows detention pond had now been directed to the town attorney's office. Our lawyer has tried to call and email Magrino several times over the last 2 weeks and have not received a call back. So in summary, we have a detention pond, has no drawings, has no maintenance records, and was not built to New York State standards. So my questions basically to the town attorney and to the board is, what has changed that required our discussions to be moved from the sewer department to the town attorney's office? Why isn't Magrino answering any of our calls? And what will the town do to enforce the developer to address these problems? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gervasi, it'd be helpful if you could leave a copy of that with us, or if you could just leave a copy of that comment, or that'd be great. All right. At this time, because we have people signed up for the public hearing, which was slated to start at 8 o'clock, we'd like to switch over to that, the public hearing about park policy, and then when that's wrapped up, we'll consider other comments. But just in order to keep on track here a bit. So thank you for your patience. I know a lot of folks are here tonight to talk about the parks policy question. So I'd like to make a motion to open our public hearing about the proposed local law about the use of town parks. Do I have a second on that? Second. Second from Divany. All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. I'll just preface it by saying that they're in the town board agendas. There is a draft of an amendment to the town code 7A, which is essentially, largely where Councilman Divany, and I think he'd agree with my brief summary here. It imposes a fee policy. It's differentiated from residents only, a fee policy whereby the non-residents would be charged a fee. Town residents have already paid in their taxes, with certain exceptions for families with visitors, grandparents, town resident needs. The focus being on prioritizing town resident access to parks, which at times can be overly impacted or overused, in which in any case costs upwards of over $1 million a year to maintain. So getting some offset from non-resident use is part of the intent of that policy. So that policy it's printed in the town board agenda, and as with any town board action related to changing a town code, there's a public hearing. We hear from people, consider their comments, talk with our lawyers, and then they go through a SECRA, a state-required review process, and then if we choose to amend the town code based on those comments and research, that's what we do. So right now, we're continuing a public hearing which was started a few weeks ago on this topic. And many people have made comments before and have also sent emails and otherwise engaged the process. And I will say that, that it's been a very productive conversation so far, I think, and in some ways, because the proposal that's on the page here is the same as last week, it might not reflect all of the conversation that's happened. But nonetheless, I know we're looking forward to hearing from town residents about their thoughts on this policy change. So, having said that, I would like to invite, starting out, it looks like Ruth Weber is at the top of this list as well. So Ms. Weber, if you could approach the podium.
I would agree with the board if they, and the group of parents here tonight, that there should be preferential treatment for our taxpayers, our beleaguered taxpayers with probably the highest tax burden in, if not the state, also in the country. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that comment. All right. There we go. Tom Lynch. Why don't we hear from people first?
Good evening, folks.
Welcome.
My name is Tom Lynch. I'm here to represent Preserve Orangetown. Preserve Orangetown wishes to have Orangetown parks for residents only. We do not wish to have any fees associated with residents using the parks. We do not want the option for non-residents to pay a fee daily, monthly, or annually. Many of our neighboring towns have successfully enacted these laws. We want the town board to strike a carefully planned and executed means of enforcement. We do not wish to create a problem greater than one we wish to solve. By this, we mean proof of residency, when requested, should be an easy and painless process. A driver's license, a golf permit, a town dump permit should be sufficient proof of residency. Any resident who has none of the above should be able to obtain a pass from the Parks and Rec or Town Hall for free or a small nominal fee to cover the cost of the permit itself. Residents should be allowed to bring guests to the parks, an out-of-town friend or relative. Caretakers should be able to have access to these parks when with residents' children. It is important to note that much consideration and thought has come into this opinion. We heard from several residents opposed to this legislation. We understand the idea conceptually that parks should be free to use for everyone. The reality is, however, that we have a limited amount of park space, and it's a resource that we fund. Thusly, residents deserve priority access. The fact that many neighboring towns have already enacted this legislation exasperates the problem for Orangetown. The option for non-residents is growing smaller. With that being said, Preserve Orangetown wants to go on record that we support residents their guests and caretakers for our parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Dunnigan.
Good evening again, Chris Dunnigan from Pearl River. Should be relatively short. First, I'd like to voice my strong support for prioritizing resident access to parks over non-residents. There are a number of options that have been suggested, whether it's an outright ban, fees, or other things. And I'd like to ask, what is the town's plan for enforcement of these particular plans, right? So in a fee structure, how are you going to go and enforce this? Are you going to walk around and ask everybody for a badge? Same thing for the non-resident. If you do an outright ban, how are you going to enforce this? So more clarity there, I think, would be helpful for everybody. Also, the current code that's in the agenda codifies the fees and the fines if you choose to go that way. Can that be left to the park commissioner or somebody else to define those fees as they need to change in the future without having to go through this process again? Is that something that can be done? Finally, whatever we choose to do or whatever gets done, we need to enforce this, no matter how you do it, and that falls on the town board, enforcement, and the residents in this town to make sure that these things get enforced. And that's across the board for everything. And I hope that regardless of the decision that's made, the town board explains why they made that decision and what the rationale was for each of you to get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunnigan. John Buckley.
Good evening. My name's John Buckley. I've been a resident of Orangeburg for 33 years now. I understand the reasons for the proposed law. I'm just troubled by a few things in it. I really don't like the idea of having to have a badge or an ID band. I think it's going to be difficult for this to be enforced uniformly and fairly, so I'd like to see what's done with the enforcement. I am concerned with family and friends that I'd have coming. I guess there's some movement to make some adjustments for that. Like I have a brother and a sister-in-law and my nephew who come to visit from Riverdale in the Bronx, and when they come up, they spend good dollars at Hogan's or one of the restaurants in Pearl River. I don't know why they should have to be paying $15 to use the town parks. Or my son, who lived in Orangeburg for 30 years and just moved to Florida, when he comes to visit us, does he have to pay $5, and is he prohibited from using the parks unless my wife and I are with him? Because when it says badge valid per day, non-resident accompanied by guest of town resident, I thought that was, I don't understand what that meant, guest of town resident. So I understand the idea behind it. I think the idea behind it is great. I'm just concerned with some of the details as to how it would be enforced. Thank you.
I just,
I want to yield
I
to
just
Councilman Divany for a minute to.
just to clarify, I mean, we took this, when you start with a law, you start with another law that you can try to mold and amend. So some of the things, you know, we have heard the public, and the majority of the board has agreed that, you know, that guests will not be charged, caretakers will not be charged. Paul came up with the idea that veterans will not be charged. So we have heard those, but, so those are some of the proposals that we're gonna discuss once the public portion is done, that we are gonna make changes to the law after hearing people and their concerns. So, and as far as badges, I mean, I was looking at like it was, I think, the city of Avon in New Jersey, where you have to have badges because, you know, most people are coming from not that area. So our idea is to make it as easy for the residents of this town as possible. So a driver's license, a golf permit, people have the stickers for the transfer station. And if you don't have any of that, we will, as Mr. Lynch said, we will offer an ID badge, an ID card for a nominal fee. So we are going to make it as easy as possible. And, I'll let Eric address the enforcement when we get through the public portion. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Tom. Our next person to speak is Chris Day.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Chris Day. I'm a resident of Palisades. Before I begin, I also want to note, in addition to Flag Day, today is the U.S. Army's 241st birthday. So thing of note there. I want to thank the town board for bringing this issue forward. I think that the reality is that both options, whether it's residents only or non-residents with a fee, are better than the status quo. And that said, we shouldn't be going for better, we should be going for what's best. I believe that there is no reason we can't realistically prevent non-residents from using most of our parks here in Orangetown, thereby giving full priority to our residents. Obviously, and based on some of the evidence collected by Councilman Divney, there are certain things that prevent that in specific situations. If the park was deeded for public use, we can't do that. If there's a grant that was given towards it that said it has to be open for everyone, we can't do that. But exemptions can be made for those specific parklands. The remainder, however, I don't see a level of risk necessary to prevent us from taking the step that was taken by our neighbors to the north of restricting the remainder of our parks to residents only. The risk of facing a court battle is minimal. The risk of losing that court battle is even lower. Whatever risk there is, it's not worth not taking this step. We have to be willing to take somewhat bolder positions in order to ensure we preserve our town. If this level of risk is unacceptable to the board, I really am concerned as to what level of risk we'd be accepting in general. If we're going to preserve Orangetown, we have to make sure that we're willing to fight in court if necessary for proper laws to preserve our people. So, to conclude, I do want to, again, thank the town board for this effort. For the law as proposed is solid. However, I urge you strongly to consider a ban on non-residents for all parks under which they do not fall under any specific reason for them to be open to the broader public that would cause us a court problem. I thank you for your time and look forward to further comments.
Esther Baitler, please.
Good evening, Supervisor Stewart and town board members. For the record, my name is Esther Ann Baitler, and I'm a consumer at Kathy Lucan's Independent Living Center in Spark Hill. Tonight I'm here to address you not to charge people who use Orangetown parks. This is absolute ludicrous. Are you going to tell me that if our consumers go to a concert and they go in our unique venture van, that they should have to pay? I don't think so. And this should go for all the parks. It's not right. As Rabbi Chef stated, if his son brings a friend to play basketball, the kid has to pay for a friend. That's totally inappropriate. And I just don't understand why the town board absolutely wants to charge, let alone produce badges. This is unrealistic. I have to tell our people, oh, if you go to a concert, you gotta pay. I mean, I find this totally absurd. I now have to tell our people, oh, you can't go to veterans to a concert unless you pay. Dennis, you sit on the venture board. This is shameful. I totally disagree with the way it's being handled. I'm begging the board to take a stand against not charging Seniors and handicapped people and non-residents, no one should have to pay. I really think that you guys need to work better on this by not charging. This is not right. You know, it's coming to election time, and people want to be voted on. But when you're going to charge people, that's not right. What makes you board people think that it's okay to charge? Have you ever thought outside the box not to charge or to make us produce badges? This is unfair. Where should these kids go to play in Orangetown if not at the parks? They should not have to produce a badge or pay.
Thank you, Esther.
Please, I urge all of you to work on this.
Thank you. That's exactly what's happening
And put a
tonight.
stop to it immediately. I know if Dan Lucas was here, he'd be very proud of me. Thank you.
I'm sure you're right. Thanks for that comment.
Right, okay.
Watson Morgan.
Good evening. Watson Morgan, Blauvelt, New York. I've been a resident since 1969, and I've seen many, many things happen in our parks, some of which I agree with, some of them that I don't. I've seen most everything that people have problems fathoming. The example of having a friend who comes to visit for the house and let's go for a picnic or walk around Veterans Park or whatever park we have is a wonderful thing, and I think should be continued. The problem, and it's not really a problem, we have a system in place that if there's going to be a group of more than X number, maybe it should be reduced to I've seen in a number of surrounding communities that if you're going to have a group of 15 or more people that you have to obtain a permit from the municipality. I think it's fair to say if you're having a friend over to go play in the swings or play basketball, that's somewhat of a non-issue. I find it somewhat offensive to say that people should pay nothing and somebody from outside to have a single person pay $250, I think that's almost usurious, if that's the correct word. That's the part that I find somewhat offensive. I do think the parks should be for our people primarily and their guests. I have no problem with that. But when you get to have a group of people, and some people may call it a gaggle if you look that up in your dictionaries, that can be an unruly group. Sometimes they talk about the geese. Think of it as people. But are we trying to control the number of cars? I was over in one of the Ramapo parks the other day, and they have a big sign saying any group of more than 15 people must call the Parks Department and get a permit. Any group that no buses are allowed to come into the park. So if you have a bus that holds 50 people to come in and have a picnic, unless it's a group that's a school group, which we allow our parks to be used by school groups end of the year or special thing. We have our parks available, and everybody knows the soccer and controlled sports. They're welcome. They do wonderful things, but maybe there should be something about a permit, and that can be done randomly. I think excellent suggestion about if you have a license, if you have a sticker for this, a fee is paid to the golf to be a member of the golf course, of $50 a pop. So it's not that we don't have fees for something to control the access to the parks, whether it be a golf course or a regular park. But I think we're pointed in the right direction and we're talking about it. but we definitely don't want to have Mr. Edwards have to, hi guy, to defend an action in court that there's certain controls that might be actionable in a court of law, and we don't want to have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Watson also serves on our Parks Development Committee, so he'll be here tomorrow night as part of that committee, if anybody wants to come out to that. The next person signed up is Jacob Frank.
I'm Jacob Frankie. I'm not a resident of town. I'm a resident of the town next over in Northville, but I'm here as a representative of the New York New Jersey Trail Conference and as chair of the Long Path Committee, which is one of our premier long-distance trails in the state, mostly in New York State, starting in New York State, currently going to close to Albany, soon reaching the Adirondacks. Anyway, this hiking trail that we have maintained for many years, and I have worked for many, many years as a non-resident in your parks in Tacamac and in Schuyler, maintaining hiking trails, keeping some of the fields open there, doing a lot of work with other members of our organization, some of whom are residents of Orangetown, others who are not. Anyway, we feel a little bit, slighted, offended by this because, what happens to us? We are not talking about people, in this case, who use your baseball fields or what. We just want to hike through. Our trail is used by long-distance hikers, people who start in, I had recently one staying at my place who came from Albany, was almost 4 weeks on the road, reached Orangetown, and what would you have to do? Stop in Blofeld and go on the roads to go around Tacamac or find the town hall and pay a fee? I don't know. There are certain issues that I'm not sure that you have thought about some of those issues. What happens to our maintainers who want to maintain the trails in your park, cut trees? We come out, we are certified chainsawers, we cut the trees, we make sure that the trail's in good shape. What do we do? Do we have to pay $150? I'm not sure the trail conference is up for that. Now, so that is a few things I wanted to bring to your attention that I'm not sure you have calculated in these plans, and that some of us have to deal with at some point. A few other quick thoughts on the site. I would hate to have to go to New York City and walk in Central Park and find out I cannot go in Central Park because I don't have a proper badge on me or something like that. Some of those parks are precious. They are, it's a city park, but maybe that's the next step. Maybe New York City will charge us entrance fees too. I don't know. In China, they do that. I've been in China, and most cities, if you want to go into a public park, they have a gate, and you pay a ticket. It's like going into the zoo or something like that. I don't know. I don't like that trend. I would rather see it go the other way. That China would act like us rather than we like parks in China. Anyway, that is a few loose thoughts that have nothing to do with with what I really wanted to say. But yeah, so we do have people who have worked for your town for many years as volunteers, and are there going to be provisions for that, or how are you going to handle that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Those are the folks who signed in for this public hearing by a raise of hands. Is anybody else here to speak? Okay, in the back there on the white shirt. Yes, please come up to the podium. Just say your name and where you live.
I'm Paul Kabarik, and I'm from Tappan, New York. I wanted to speak on the previous issue, but first of all, Mr. Dunnigan from Pearl River, if we would ground the utility lines, there wouldn't be any poles for people to clutter up. And the Europeans would never stand for overhead utility lines. They come here and they think it's like a third world country. But getting to what this is about is that I feel very strongly that we need some form of control over who gets into the park, and it's not fair, given the highly litigious nature of our present society, that some measure of control via permits or user fees is not unreasonable to protect the residents of Orangetown from a litigation that could probably bankrupt the town and make it impossible for it to maintain the parks, which everyone intends to use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Larkin?
Thank you, Supervisor.
I think, in essence, I could say that I support everything that Chris Day said previously. I think our parks should be open only to the residents of Orangetown, and that's it. I'm willing to go to the Parks Department and get a badge or a little card that says that I'm a resident of Orangetown. I'm a old, new grandmother, and I'm beginning to use Veterans Memorial Park, and where I live, we only have one little park, but I guess Veterans is really the main park that Orangetown has. And I'm more than glad to do that, because I really do feel that we have every right to restrict those who use our park to those who live in Orangetown and pay for the park. And as far as it hasn't been funded with federal funding, I think we are okay there. There's a smell in this room that is absolutely affecting my breathing. I don't know where it's coming from. It's like a sweet smell. It's right over here, and it's awful. I don't know what it is, but it's awful. And I have asthma, so I have a tendency to be sensitive to these things. I don't understand what the last gentleman said about our parks, that his group, hikers, have the right to come into our park and start chopping down trees. Now, I'm a tree hugger. Where is he talking about that he and his group can walk wherever they want and start chopping down trees to create walking paths or bike paths? Maybe I misunderstood him, but I don't think I did.
The short answer to that is the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference for many, many, many years has maintained the long path, which goes from Fort Lee up to Albany as a through path, town, state, county.
But when they come in,
That's the short answer. So
Supervisor-
they have volunteers, they maintain trails, and that's the experience that he's speaking from. That's enough, and it's with town permission.
It is with the town permission, and
With
they
state
go in
and county.
areas where, I'm just thinking about, up about Clausland Mountain in that area. That's a residential area, too. I mean, what is their limitations to approaching private property? How close can they come to a person? Don't I get 5 minutes? Do you have on this? Do you have
He was
that thing in your
stapling
hand?
something, and if
Oh,
you would continue with your
okay.
comment, that would be great.
But anyway, I do support whatever of the words that Chris said. I think that's the right way to go, and we have every right to limit our parks to residents only.
Thank you. By a raise of hands, is anybody else here to speak on the matter of the park policy as proposed? All right, seeing no hands up. What's the will of the board? Do you want to go back and finish our public hearing that we started that's still open? There are about 5 more people signed in. Is that all right with you guys? We'll get everybody's ideas on the table.
Are you going to close it for the public hearing for this?
We started a public hearing of a general nature, and then we switched to the park policy hearing, public hearing, and now I'm willing to go with what the board wants. Do you want to go back to the comments of people who signed in before, so we can get those in? So you want to, what do you want to do then? This portion of the hearing, as far as public comment, is over. Do you want to respond to the? All right, let's
That's
do
what
that then.
we
I'm
normally
fine with that.
do
I just
when
want to
there
make
is a
sure people
public
know if
hearing.
they're waiting or not.
We address whatever that particular issue is.
Close the public hearing and then answer the people's.
All right, I second the motion to close the public hearing. Is all in favor, say aye. The ayes have it. So the public hearing, Councilman Valentine moved to close the hearing, and I seconded it. And all in favor said aye. So perhaps maybe Councilman Dibny should lead off, since he is the main protagonist of this park policy. Tom, you want to speak to the comments?
Protagonist, okay.
All right, well,
All
it's an
right.
SAT word.
All right, I failed SATs. I mean, basically what I said before, we will, as far as the band, I'm proposing we amend it to any reasonable form of ID, driver's license, school, if the schools have ID that you need, golf ID, ID for the drop-off. So any reasonable form of ID, or, the town will provide ID at a nominal fee. So that's the First Amendment. Getting rid of the caretaker for town resident, because, I mean, if you're a child can have guests too, so there wouldn't be that provision that you have to register them. They're guests of the child they're with, so that would take care of that concern. Non-residents accompanied by guests of a town resident, we'd get rid of that because, again, we've heard what you say. You want your guests to be able to come in without having worried about getting charged. We already have the provision that anyone who's participating in an adult or youth sports league that is registered through the town, you don't have to worry about fees for that. Paul suggested that any veterans, we will not be charging veterans, regardless of what town they're in, to use our parks. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a great idea. And those are your amendments that, you know, I've discussed with most of the board. Does anyone else have any comments or concerns that want to be addressed? The only ones that we have to exempt out is because we had U.S. Land and Water Conservation Fund money for Borscht Park and Cherrybrook Park. I went onto the website, and those are specifically listed with Forever Central Park, which I'm assuming is the park downtown Forever. But it's not veterans, because that money was taken in 1970. We didn't own veterans until 1974. So those two parks would have to be exempted out because there's specific federal provisions that govern those, that, you know, unless.
Tom, what about developmental disabilities?
Esther, we're having a conversation here. We appreciate your.
That's what I saw, John. If you have any more information than that, but that was the reading I had. You know, but that's why you're here. So, you know, those are the parks I was looking to exempt out. I mean, again, you know, if anyone on the board.
Well, you know, John, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, I'm an electrician. So I'm relying on your guys' information on why we can't just ban residents like they've done in other towns. And what I was told was because if there's money into things, or if there is history where it was open to the public for many years, that it would be problematic to then all of a sudden just close it to the public. But we could do basically or essentially the same thing we were hoping to do by charging a fee for non-resident. Is that correct?
I apologize, Paul. Somehow I lost the connection in what you just said. Is
Okay.
that
We have a
before-
lot of people coming up here saying, we just want you to ban all non-residents.
Okay, let's deal with that. Okay, no. You ought not do that. I heard Mr. Day, I heard he said that there was a minimal chance of a lawsuit and even a smaller chance of someone prevailing on the lawsuit. With all due respect, those are words, and there's absolutely nothing to support that pure speculation. Our research, and I don't want to get into, well, Clarkstown does this, Ramapo does that.
Not interested. What are
God
we
bless
doing?
them. They can adopt what they want. They can defend their policies. If there's a lawsuit, they'll deal with it. They won't deal with ours. So insofar as the town attorney's office is concerned, no, you can't ban residents. Plain and simple. Non-residents. Residents. Or maybe that'd be easy. Ban everybody. You can't do it. That is our opinion. So now move on to the question of the fees. Can you charge non-residents and not charge residents? In certain parks, you clearly cannot. and in other parks, it is not clear. You know, there's a policy decision to be made here. And there is a level of fee that's set forth in the law that you may have to defend. I'm not going to tell you that these fees are excessive, but someone might tell you that. My personal view is you ought not be voting on this tonight, that you should document your reasons in the law and in the resolution through which you adopt the law. This is sort of a conclusion, but it doesn't give the explanation. And frankly, if I'm asked to defend this law in court, I'd like there to be a legislative history, and it's not here.
If I'm hearing you correctly, this is defensible, charging a fee, but we should add in some language which will say why we are deciding to now charge non-residents, such as we want them to chip in to help maintain the parks or pay for the infrastructure which we as taxpayers have already paid for. So if they're going to come and enjoy our parks, we just want them to chip in their fair share. That would be something that's defensible.
That would be something you would include.
That would be something I would include. Okay.
Among other things, I would think. That is not in the present version of the law.
Okay, so it is something we should consider, or we could consider. You think it could be defendable if we include the appropriate language on why we're taking up this position to charge non-residents a fee?
I think that the town is allowed to charge a reasonable fee to distinguish between resident and non-residents through the imposition of a reasonable fee.
So if I take my tax bill and I figure out how much my money goes to pay for the parks,
You don't want to go down that road.
well, because they want to come use my park, shouldn't they chip in the same amount I am?
Well, there's just various ways of coming up with a reasonable fee, and so I think you need to look at each one.
Okay.
I mean, the number is consistent with what they're charging with at the fields at the complex. Non-residents are getting charged about $250 more at the complex. I mean, that's how I looked at the numbers and I said, all right, that's what we're charging. The max fee is $250, but there's other reasons, you know. We have limited park space. People say, well, I go by and it's not crowded. You go by there on a Saturday, it's crowded. You know, there's not enough parking. It's crowded. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to replace those, you know, jungle gyms and what have you. I mean, they've been there for a while. I can tell you, Eric is our director of Parks and Rec. His staff has been reduced. He gets less and less money to do the repairs that he needs. We have a 2% cap. You know, if we have non-residents using our parks, they should trip into, you know, which we do with our golf course. Non-residents are charged more to use our golf course. They're charged more to have a pass. We charge non-residents more to do our rec programs. We charge non-residents more to do a lot of things in this town, just as they do in other towns. So there's a host and a number of reasons why we should be able to charge a reasonable fee. The controller says we can, in his opinion. I think it was 8522. He says you can charge a reasonable fee to non-residents to use your parks. And what was it? Gurwitz versus the city of Long Beach. They said you could charge a reasonable fee to non-residents. So we can charge reasonable fees to non-residents.
So I guess we just need backup on why it's reasonable, which makes sense to me. But as we heard tonight, we have certain parks which are falling apart in disrepair, such as Cherry Brook, and this money that we would collect would go to help repair those parks.
And the ironic thing is, Eric and I had the same conversation that Mike Mandel brought up today, 2 days ago, saying that he would like to get rid of that rink and pave it over and just make it grassland over there.
But
So we hear you, Mike. We were actually talking about it 2 days ago.
in terms of those two parks, if you can't have, if you can't charge non-residents, those two parks, you have to have a park policy or a Parks and Recreation policy that there should be permits for over, whether it's 10 people or 15 people or whatever, because Cherry Brook Park has been inundated at times, people just coming off a train, landing there and trying to use all the resources there, and it's dead wrong, you know, so
Well,
we need, as part of the.
We do have
Well,
groups over 20 right now. We can make it 15, we can make it 10. We
well,
can
I'm
change
saying
that.
that has, I would ask that that's included in the law for
I
the
think-
parks.
I don't even think you have to have it in the law. I think Eric can make that as park policy.
Well, it's also part of the, Esther,
Esther, we're not doing
you're out
that.
of line. In terms of the enforcement, coming down, one of the earlier speakers talked about enforcement. The Parks and Recreation has had enforcement through the years, and it's been basically at veterans. I've been kicked off the soccer field playing baseball with my 8-year-old at the time. It's back a few years. But because I was on the soccer field without a permit to be on the soccer field, just myself and my son, boom, I get kicked off. I've been kicked off softball fields because I didn't have a permit. I seem to have a pattern here. But it's a thing where there has been enforcement in the past. And it's a thing where, for me, I left in each case. All right, and in the case with the permit on the softball fields, our teams left because we didn't have a permit. You're not going to fight with the ranger. Part of the enforcement has to be that it's reasonable. Eric Gordon, the head of Parks and Recreation, will set up the enforcement. You have to make sure you have people that have common sense and are enforcing the law and taking into account what Tom Divany has talked about, whether it's guests, grandparents with their kids, the kids are residents. I don't know how you prove that, but it's a thing where, all right, the intent of the law is not to be a burden on the residents and their guests. That is not the intent of the law. All right, is the law needed? There's no doubt in my mind that the law is needed. And again, I've said this before, I commend Mr. Divany and commend the town attorney for trying to make this as good as possible in terms of standing up legally. I think it is very important, and I understand the people who say, hey, just ban it. That's probably my, my gut instinct is more in that way. But one of the things I have learned through the years is I trust Attorney John Edwards is a reason why he's here. All right, a lot of times to keep us on the straight and narrow, and I appreciate that. So if the laws need to, if this particular law needs to be fixed up, our intent is still to pass this as a board. That is our intent, and to pass it as soon as possible. So, Tom, back to the drawing board with, and Paul, with with
John, I have
Mr. Edwards.
I have a quick question. With the changes that we made tonight and the insertion of the language that you feel necessary, do we have to go back for a new public hearing? Is that a what do they call it, a major change, or is that a minor change?
If you collectively as a board believe it's not a significant change over the law that's before you, then no, there's no need to go back.
Excellent, thank you.
Jerry, do you want to comment before I go?
Yeah, I spoke with Eric and Andy today. We discussed all this. I spoke with Tom yesterday. We do need some sort of a law. We need to restrict things. The parks are overcrowded. People at the golf course, residents get first shot at tee times, so this would be similar in many ways. I do feel that families should be able to bring in, you have somebody visiting and you're going with it, you bring a guest with you, I don't see a problem with that. As far as the enforcement goes, Eric and I talked about it today, and his policy, there are sections, what was it, 713 and 714 we discussed, of the law, where it allows for the policies of the superintendent of parks to be enforced. Okay, it can be enforced by the rangers, and if need be, the police department can be called in and enforce them. So I think we just go back and tweak it a little bit, and we move forward.
For my part, just to make myself clear, I do believe, and I think in my votes on other topics, we've seen prioritizing town resident access is always top, and controlling taxes. There are problems in certain town parks with too much impact from non-residents, and they should be charged, and that should help offset the cost. I think it's $1 million or so of maintaining the town's parks. I think we've seen a lot of ideas come forward and kind of adjustments to this concept as we've gone along. It doesn't have the kind of satisfying simplicity of the Clarkstown policy, and we've heard, and I think that's a frustration to a lot of people in the room. And we've heard from our town attorney on that, and that's the man whose legal opinions I'm going to trust. The reality is that then it gets complicated, a little bit complicated, and I think we're getting there. I mean, we started out with a proposal to charge town residents, but now town residents are free. We started out with a proposal that that didn't make allowances as kind of adeptly as it does now for guests, and questions like that. I raised the question of, are you really going to tell a veteran from outside town that he can't walk to the walkway of heroes? The answer is obviously no, and I thank Paul Valentine and Tom and the rest for easily recognizing that. We've been talking about the ways in which external funding affects our authority or autonomy to make decisions about parks. We've researched that. I think the jury's still out. We get multiple sources of funding. I did have our lobbyists look into I call it pork, the old word. You try to get money for the town for facilities. And so some funds like that really are, as long as you use them for what you said, it doesn't come with strings attached. Other things like that Land and Water Conservation Fund, I've read it too, and it does pose limitations. My reading, and I guess I have to double check this, John, was that it was saying that you couldn't have a resident-only policy, but you could charge reasonable fees. So I feel like I want to learn more about those legal questions. I don't see them as fully resolved or fully hashed out yet. But I think we're on our way in this sort of murky terrain of real policy making rather than wishful thinking towards something that will and is a benefit to town residents and to the park system. I think one of the major outlying issues here is the fact that we have 24 parks, and I think it's 24 or 22 or 24, and some are large, some are small. There's about 7 playgrounds. There's a diversity of parks. And the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, for example, who's been volunteering in town, county, and state parks up on the mountain for years, trying, clearing, getting branches off trails and putting up signs when the trees fall down and things like that. Those guys are saying, maybe this policy makes sense for the high demand parks where we're investing in facilities, but maybe not over there. I see that as an unresolved question. The bike path, take a park like, the one right in the middle of Tappan, a business district type parks in the middle of Spark Hill. I think beyond wishful thinking, we're in the terrain of actually parsing out a policy which makes sense, which prioritizes town resident needs and focuses on mitigating the effect of excessive non-resident use in certain specific areas, while being as convenient and cheap as possible for town residents and for enforcement. So I'm happy to keep working on this. I think it needs a lot of work, but I think it's on the right track, and it comes from a place of real shared unanimous feeling that town residents need to be prioritized and that non-residents need to pay their fair share. And I'll just say that I'm certainly willing to continue. But I think what we need is a document for public view, which actually, puts in the changes that we're talking about, which provides the information that Eric is providing to the town board on costs, on the method of enforcement, as one gentleman asked about. Is it a booth? Is it rangers? How many? Where? And things like that. There's work to do here, and I commend the townsfolk for weighing in on it. I don't expect to get a policy that leaves everybody happy, but I very much expect to have one that makes the town better off than it was before.
I mean, Andy, I have to disagree. I think we're almost there. We just have to put in some qualifying language regarding the history, but we've hashed out most of this law, and we have the enforcement provisions. So, I'm ready to vote on this. I think we've been working on it for a while, and I'm once we, like Jerry said, we're going to tweak it, but I don't think we have as much work to do as you think. That's my opinion.
I agree with Tom.
But you're saying you don't want to vote tonight, right?
I'm saying that, but
Okay, that's what I was
I'm
saying
saying
too.
is,
We
you're
already
saying-
said we were listening to Attorney Edwards. That's who we said, all right? But to throw, to make it, to use your term, more murky, that's what you seem to be trying to do here. I agree with Tom. We're close to getting this thing resolved. And again, in terms of covering ourselves legally, that's the important thing. Whatever verbiage that John is talking about, we'll put that in there. Whatever minor tweaking needs to be done, that's fine too. I do agree with you, Andy, that it should be out on the website, that people can look at it before we come and vote on it, at a meeting.
The question is, we want to put this on for July 12th?
No, I would put it on the 19th, so that, no, the 12th is the.
That's the
Yeah,
next.
we could talk about
We'll
it.
we'll workshop it and
Vote
then,
on it on the regular
and
town
then
board meeting.
move it for
All right, we'll do it on
the regular schedule, so. That sounds good to me. And just a clarification, just for people to remember, there are a host of exceptions to this rule, the sports teams, any group needs a permit anyway already. And so there are other town parks policies in which the town uses to control access to parks, which are in Chapter 7A of the town code, and people should take a look at that.
And obviously the concerts, the 4th of July,
Oh, another reminder is I think there's a lot of people in town who don't realize that the Central Avenue Park is actually a school property, and so the town parks department doesn't maintain it, and the town code, as far as our parks go, doesn't apply to it. So there's just these nuances. So if you're out there, you're talking with your neighbors about this, and hopefully you can help clarify these kinds of matters.
So I'm making a motion to continue this on July 19th.
I second that.
8 o'clock, and you want to take a 5-minute recess?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Make a motion for a 5-minute recess for the town board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good to see the spirit in the room.
You saw what I said.
All right, item number 5 is a resolution related to our wonderful $900,000 funded by New York State.
We're not going back to public order?
I'm sorry. You're right. We need to do back. Sorry. That's why we have a team here. All right, public portion. We left off with Guy Gervasi. The next person on the list was Gary Abate. Gary, you still here? Abadi? Okay, not there. I got Eileen Larkin. You want to take 2 for Eileen Larkin?
Members of the board, I'd like to thank Ann Penzow on her lengthy and very informative article in the June 8th issue of the Our Town. The title was Law Would Mandate Drug Take Back. Reading it, I learned for the first time that our drinking water is contaminated with the over-the-counter drugs and prescription drugs that people flush down the toilet. These drugs leach into the groundwater and seep into the groundwater. Let me just see the article here. Basically, it says Where there are wastewater treatment plants, prescription and over-the-counter drugs poured down the sink or flushed down the toilet can pass through the treatment system and enter rivers and lakes. They may flow downstream to serve as sources for community drinking water supplies. Water treatment plants generally are not equipped to remove the medicines. Basically, that's an important line. Also learned that 85% of male smallmouth bass are demonstrating characteristics of the opposite sex. I recommend reading this article to everybody in Orangetown. The quality and safety of our water has been made less safe to drink for many reasons. Lead in school drinking fountains, pipes that leach, inferior filtration measures, etc., etc. Lead is not the only issue headlining the papers today. So is dirty water. People have more UTIs, bladder infections, asking why. I have a personal reason to find out more about the water that comes into my home. If you also feel or share these concerns, the public, you can contact me at 359-6589. I would like to pursue this issue. We deserve quality drinking water because water testing kits are available at Lowe's, etc. I believe the Rockland County Legislature and County Exec Day is preparing new legislation that will require expired and unused drugs be turned into designated drop-off centers. And I hope that you as a town board will have a memorial resolution to support that legislation up in the county, and it's also on the state level. And you know, without our water, without safe water, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I think we take our safety, our water safety for granted. And I think different issues that have been coming out about lead in the water and everything else is making us more aware of the fact that if we don't have safe drinking water, our bodies will not be healthy. And it's happening a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Larkin. Heather Hurley.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. Next Monday's estimate was 60th, or Tuesday, 60th birthday.
Happy birthday, Esther. We mentioned that before.
Heather Hurley, Pearl River. Good evening, Town Board. I just have a couple of questions, some which were also asked at the May 24th Town Board meeting. But first, I'd like to ask, what stage is the town in the RFP process regarding a consulting firm to review the town code? Has the board reconsidered taking on the role to fix the one amendment to ban the manufacturing of BTX in Orangetown? Is this board prepared to consider a moratorium on any future proposals and expansions in Orangetown involving chemicals, biofuel production, and other such processes while this code review is taking place? Again, months ago at another town board meeting, some of you agreed that this particular amendment should get passed first and foremost before an entire code review. So I'm asking, what has changed since then? On the subject of aloof plastics, if there is a town code which contains an entire section on odors, again, why isn't the town enforcing the town code on odors as it relates to the multiple complaints filed by residents against?
It is enforcing it.
Are they fined? How is that enforced?
We should.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, great. Thank you. And I also had a question about will there be a public presentation in Town Hall by the Highway Department regarding the pedestrian mobility project from Central Avenue to Crooked Hill Road in Pearl River? I noticed that there is a petition on social media calling upon the installation of pedestrian four-way crossing lights, and it seems that some of the public is not aware of the grant that was handed down through the federal government to the state DOT about this pedestrian mobility project. So if the board would consider putting that possibly on an agenda so the public could see what stage that is in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Amy Wertheim, are you still here? Amy? Oh, there she is, okay.
Good evening, Town Board. Amy Wertheim, Pearl River. I have a few questions. How does Aloof hire an independent consultant? That seems to be an oxymoron. The town should be hiring the consultant with money in escrow from Aloof, just as proposed for Nelitech. The status of the code review and change concerning the manufacturing of BTX. And I concur with Mike Mandel regarding Cherrybrook Park. I see the young man most mornings at approximately 6:30 while I'm walking. And I would very much appreciate during the board's discussion period that one or more of you respond to what I've asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Watson Morgan?
Watson Morgan Blauvelt, getting back to the discussion for this. Generally, our parks are, for everybody. And we have to make that prominent. We have to figure out ways that with a 2% cap, it's hard for us to adjust and do things that make the parks better. What do? Say, we've cut people, we've cut staff. Do we lean on volunteers? In the case of the situation with the mountain biking and that kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about over the next weeks and months, we have to lean on people and organizations to help, whether they be the Lions Club, the Rotary, whomever, to help us out, Boy Scouts projects to make these things better and use our resources properly. I just think we have to look at that. We look at $1 million. That's a number that pays for people to mow the lawn, to paint the fence, to fix the fence, to clean the bathrooms, things. And it doesn't really go that far, really far. And you look at our parks, even Cherrybrook and stuff, there's so many things that have to be done at those parks. Talking about a bathroom or facilities that don't work. Do we get a better grant, or for some of those parks, do we apply for better grants to do stuff? I go to the Bronx Zoo with my grandchildren, and I did for years. We were members of the park, and they actually made them put in an ecological toilet system that was done by grants and such. If you want to go down the grant route, we should look at all the grants. I think you have a proposal. I know it's still on for today, but to look at grants that are non-offensive that we can do to help out. Put solar panels on things to make it self-sufficient for electricity. Go somewhat that route, but we have to look at all aspects to make things work. That's about it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Watson. Paul Kuborg?
Anyone else want to speak tonight?
All right, not here. Hi there.
I'm Barbara Dello from Blauvelt, and I just want to make a comment. I've noticed how many people come to town board meetings because of their love for this town and for the investment it makes in its children, for their concern that it remains a safe place for the kids and for all residents, and because of their appreciation for the wonderful character of our community. I want to commend them, and I also hope we all appreciate really what a wonderful town we have here.
Very nice. Thank you very much. By a raise of hands, anybody else here to speak during public comment? Yes, Chris?
Hi again, Chris Day from Palisades. I only intended to speak once today, but Mr. Edwards did want to get in a little tit for tat there. So let's address the judgment question about what the risks are associated with the parks. There's basically one court case on the subject that indicates that freedom of expression is an issue to concern us when it comes to the defensibility of non-resident bans in parks. Mr. Edwards believes that any fee structure at all is too risky for this town. Anyone with an inclination for that opinion, I believe, is coloring all the rest of the opinions to the left of it as well.
Mr. Edwards did not say that any fee structure is too risky.
There was a statement that the fee structure is a concern. They didn't believe there should be a vote. We have to make sure several extra
He's opposed to the
concerns
resident
around
only,
it.
but not to the fee structure.
I mean, we can
Go ahead.
discuss it later, Andy, if you'd like, but the point is that he addressed me while I was sitting here, and now I'm happy to address his concerns. So my concern is we want to make sure we're not taking a huge risk, but there's one court case in an adjacent state. Dozens and dozens of towns have bans on non-residents and exemptions for guests of residents. We can make exemptions for freedom of speech areas in parks. No one needs to get on a slide or use a pool. We don't have pools, but use a activity in order to express themselves in accordance with the First Amendment. There could be a designated section that open grassland adjacent to a parking lot is available for freedom of speech expression by non-residents. We can address these issues without just giving up on it for fear of litigation, when litigation basically has taken place hardly ever successfully to the point of being challenged multiple levels up. I believe that the risk is worth it. I believe that there are ways to get around it, and I believe we can create legislation that will both allow residents to use the park and make sure that we are minimizing our risk, not eliminating our risk, minimizing it in court. Thank you.
Thank you. By raise of hands, is anybody else here to speak during public comment to the town board? All right, not seeing any hands up. I have a motion to close public portion. Second from Jerry Batari. All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you very much for those, as always, topical comments. Would the town board like to respond to anything that they've heard just now?
Two things. If we could get John to come up and speak about the loop.
John, could you come here a minute and just update us on the aloof action? Thank you.
I sent you a letter about a week ago that I received from Aloof regarding what steps they're taking. They have hired a consultant. We're waiting for a report from their consultant. They also did some minor, some deficiencies they found. They corrected them. And I know that the DEC is also still testing. I think they completed some of their tests. So we're waiting to see exactly what the cause is and how they can correct it. So we haven't been ignoring it. I've also sent them, part of my letter, because I sent them a letter to Aloof, was to get them back in front of the zoning board to have their performance standards reviewed again. Because they've come over the years, they've come several times to the zoning board, and they've come for different processes as part of their overall operations. So I've asked them to come back to address their overall operations, to try to get a handle on this odor that seems to be occurring.
So John, what we continue to hear is that we're not doing our job because there's no enforcement of the odor provision in the law. You're in charge of the code enforcement officers. I don't know what their, how far their ability goes, or how they test odors, or,
Well, again,
So what's going on with that? So
it's interesting because I was able to find the book that we reference in our performance standards. It's a 1951 book by some chemical engineers, and one of the chapters is about odors and how difficult it is to actually psychologically place something or a threshold on an odor. So there's different types of odors, but there's a list of, and that's mentioned, it's one of the tables, table 3 in that chapter 5 mentions the different types of odors and the different parts per million that people have found acceptable. So, and that's what they need to show or prove that they're in compliance with. Again, but we don't test the odors because not equipped to do that, building department.
People is like, you mean regulatory bodies?
Well, they test air quality.
No, I'm just saying, you
Okay.
say people find acceptable. You're talking about, like, who determines that? Is there a,
Well, again, we have a table that we use. We don't have the table, but there's a table in that book that's referenced in the performance standards that they need to comply with. So I've sent them that table and said, this is what you need to comply with. And it addresses odors.
So besides the odors, is it also in terms of the DEC, are they looking, what's the components of the air that's coming out? You know,
Well,
to me,
right.
even worse than the odors
Correct,
is if there are,
correct.
something that's really
That's why
harmful.
the DEC is
When you're
taking,
talking about plastics and whatever.
well, that's why they've taken the lead on this, because they're equipped better than we are to address these situations.
Just strikes me, like the DEC jumps on us, with the sewer department. They come in, they put us under certain decrees all the time.
Right.
All right? But here's something we need from them to do with the industry in this town, and they seem to be taking their time on it compared to what they do to us in terms of dealing with our sewer plant.
I guess my question, John, is why can't we take the lead? Just because we're not as equipped as the DEC? I guess that's what everyone's asking us to do. They're saying the DEC is not taking the lead, they're not responding to the complaints. Why can't the town board and the building department, and why can't we take the lead? Because, I mean, this is the perception we're getting, that they're not responding, and Paul want.
But they are responding.
They are responding, but I guess the perception is they're not responding in a timely manner,
I mean, John has described what we know the DEC is doing, and I don't know whether it's taking them longer than usual or not, but we are familiar with their activities, and they have personnel, and that those methods can be described further. And the town is also involved in terms of having the performance standards go to the zoning board. The performance standards describe the machinery and whether they're meeting the compliance as far as odor and emissions and other questions of public safety go. So I guess the question is, if there comes a time if you need town support to do, just let us know. I mean, it's obvious that the ball is in play. The DEC is there. The town is there. If the ZBA needs extra support, if they need to hire someone to review the performance standards, let us know what we can do to help. But it's certainly true that both agencies are directly involved. It's also true that the Department of Public Health in Rockland County used to be directly involved. And one of the reasons why Aloof doesn't smell worse now, is because back about 10 years ago, when you had Greg Price and other people at the Rockland County Department of Health in the odor and air emissions unit, they worked Aloof over with the help of the DEC in the town, and that's why a lot of the odor control technology was put in. That office doesn't exist anymore. It was rescinded as a part of public health law, and so there's a little bit of coping going on with the DEC and the town having to pick up the slack.
John,
Yeah, the question, one second. The question I have, I guess, and it's come up a number of times, is that, is there a violation there that could be addressed with a fine summons or something to introduce it so that things move a little bit quicker?
Normally, we issue a summons when they don't respond. They've responded, and again, there's certain things that have to be done before they can actually get to the end point. So,
Okay, so
hiring a
once they're notified, they have a period where they can now correct it, time to correct it. If they don't correct it, then at that point, they would receive a summons or be shut down?
Correct.
What happens if
I
there's
don't know,
multiple
shut 'em.
complaints?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What happens if there's multiple, what happens if there's 20 complaints and, they respond every time, but it's
Well, I think, the issue here is, we're trying to determine when the odors occur. They don't seem to be occurring all the time. So that's one of the issues. I've been logging in the complaints that come in to me. I know DEC's logging in complaints. There seems to be, based on the 2 months of complaints I've received, it occurs sometimes on Sundays. That seems to be more frequent. So we're trying to come up with.
Yeah, sorry. The reason why it makes a difference is because they're trying to figure out where the leak is and why it happens operationally.
Right.
And that's what the DEC is overseeing, and that's why they required them to get an engineering report. And when those recommendations for improving the odor control system are made, then it's up to the DEC, and we will lobby for that to make sure that those fixes are actually installed in order to remedy identified leaks in the odor control system. And the town and the DEC are working together on that. So when you have a sporadic or intermittent odor, that indicates to them, I mean, they have, I know because I visited the factory and talked with the managers there, their own employees and managers are also, have been told, make sure you log the odors because they are actively looking for, I'm not saying that the factory owners are God's gifts to like trying to figure out odors, but they're under a mandate from the DEC to locate the leaks, provide solutions and do them. And that is the work that's in progress right now. And so I think John is doing a great job monitoring that, and we're going to have, that when that engineering report comes out, we're going to be able to see the company adjusting its technology pursuant to that under the authority of the DEC and the emissions permit that they have, and could revoke presumably. So does that pretty much address the current knowledge on that, John? That's correct. Okay.
I have one more question, John. We had approved $5,000 to do some air testings. I went on my own and called 50 environmental companies and couldn't find anybody that could perform any kind of test which we were looking for. And all I wanted them to do was test the air around the area of the factory and make sure that it was safe. Is there such a company, or how did the county used to do it? Because I'm at my wit's end. I mean, we approved the money, but if I can't find a company that can do it, so, I honestly tried, and I was unavailable to do that. But the DEC must have a company, or the county had to have a company, right, when they had that health thing, whatever?
I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the person that they called in now to review the current problem was the same consultant they called in 5 years ago, 8 years ago when they had the problem.
Can we confirm it?
I mean, I can,
Yeah.
but I'm almost positive. So,
All right, so my question is he just
So,
trying
again,
to
he
look
fa-
for
he located-
smells?
I'm sorry?
Or is he just trying to look for smells, or can we find out what's coming out of those stacks?
odors, occur from when there's leaks or something that's not operating properly. So,
Right,
well,
the
that's what we're trying to
content
determine.
of the odor
Right.
is also a health concern.
So that's what we need to determine.
Okay, all right.
And that's what they're trying to determine.
Thank you for the update. And
Thanks,
if you
John.
hear
It's
of any,
appreciated.
if you hear of any company or anybody finds any company, we'd be willing to take their information and try to.
I have to tell you, I think if realistically, if you hire a company, $5,000 will not cover the cost.
Okay, if we can find a company that could give us a proposal, at least we'd have something to consider.
Okay.
I haven't been able to find it. I know others have.
I'm happy to take, if people want to email me or call me, obviously call John with recommendations. The engineer that I've been
I'll
talking
try to
with
reach out to
hasn't
some other
provided a proposal yet, so.
companies I know, and also some other health agencies that I've dealt with in the past. Maybe not Rockland County, but
All
other.
right. I think we need to wrap up this discussion because we can never get too far into the weeds. Sir,
And then there was a time frame. Now, what is that time frame?
can you take that up with John just outside, just get the specifics because we have other items.
Oh, well,
Let's see. We were talking about aloof.
no, Paul was speaking on public portion. I mean, commenting on public portion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got off on a long tangent there. The only, they had brought up about this, the mountain biking trail. And from what I understand, they're non-motorized, they're just mountain bikes, like bicycles.
Right, it's bicycles.
And it's, from what I understand, all the work and everything is being done, if I'm correct, Andy, or the majority of the work right now is all on state and county property.
That's true.
And they haven't even really approached the town to do anything on our property as of yet. But they have been given approvals to work on state property and do some minimal cutting and pathways and whatever else they
They've
want.
actually built about a mile of trail with state park permission in Blauvelt State Park, in cooperation with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference and other trail experts. And they're proposing, obviously with the state park's permission, to continue to help manage in order to facilitate bicycling. That's what they're
And those are
doing.
just strictly bicycle paths?
As I understand it, and I can show you some of the preliminary plans that have been shared with the state. It describes in a great deal of detail how the mountain biker volunteers, what kind of signs they would use, and what trails are appropriate for bicycles and what trails are not appropriate for bicycles, and things like that. So those documents are available. They'll be discussed here tomorrow night. Obviously, for the town, the question is the town park, and that remains to be discussed. It should be noted with regard to that it's one thing to put up some signs saying mountain bikes go this way, and it's another thing to build a trail, and it's yet another thing to hold an event which is promoted and involves more people, and that there's been no commitment on the part of the town. The town board hasn't discussed it or made any resolutions related to it. And in any case, any event in a park is a case-by-case approval process by the park superintendent and the town board. So if people are worried about a sort of a mountain biking rally taking place, it just simply isn't planned, and nobody has agreed to anything like that I'm aware of anyway.
Just to be clear, I only heard about this Thursday when I went on vacation, an hour later, a week ago. So this isn't something that the town, or at least I, have been aware of. I didn't know the state was doing this until residents started calling up and say, hey, there's someone behind my house clearing a trail. What's going on? So I appreciate the input and the connection from the residents. It doesn't sound like there's anything the town is involved in with this as of yet, so there's really nothing we can do. But I appreciate at least being brought up to date so that I knew, as a councilman, what was going on.
Cherrybrook Park, Chief? We've gotten some complaints tonight at Cherrybrook Park, whether it be the bathrooms that were there, the building, some drinking, drugs being used in it. Maybe we can have the postcards keep an eye on that and check that. Sure. There are some people spending the night there as well. Is that correct, Mr. Mandel? So,
Was Mr. Mandel the one who kind of brought your attention?
there were a number of people tonight, but
This is,
Cherrybrook.
Wordheim.
We could discuss it further.
Yeah, Cherrybrook Park, can use some consideration?
Yeah, if you can have the midnight to 8 shift, check on Cherrybrook.
I think you should get rid of that rink. I really do.
Anything else, Jerry? Dennis? Any responses to anything anybody said beyond what you said? Okay.
Someone mentioned grants tonight. The only thing about taking grants is that you give up some of your rights as a municipality when you take them. So I know, Andy, you're a big proponent of them. I'm very leery of grants because that's how you get in trouble. You give up your control as a municipality because they're always attached to something. So that's my opinion on grants.
Just on the topic of grants, actually, we do have a resolution about grants later on. We can talk about it more. They always have fine print, which you have to read really carefully. One gentleman was talking about utility poles. It is prohibited to attach anything, signs or anything else, to utility poles under town code. And those signs, as far as I'm concerned, they're in violation of the town code. And our highway department and code enforcers will pull them down, and repeat offenders get phone calls. But it's kind of a never-ending battle that any town faces, is getting the junk off the poles.
I would say pull them down yourself. If I see them,
Yeah,
I
you're
pull them
welcome.
down.
You're welcome to pull them. I do that all the time. Cars for
It's-
cash, kickboxing. If I have time, we should all have a couple of those in the
Or you
back
can even
seat.
call them, just to aggravate them, too.
That's probably enough for now. Let's get back to our town board agenda. Anybody has any questions, obviously welcome to talk to me afterwards. Send me an email. Try to get you the information you need. We appreciate your involvement. Number 5 is, speaking of grants, we took a lot of hard work. We got almost $1 million to build a drainage facility, which is really going to be the pride of the town and the region as far as green innovation and preventing flooding and improving water quality in the Spark Hill Creek. And that's over by the Homes for Heroes Veterans Housing Group on Western Highway. And this resolution is one of many that relates to that grant. This is a SECRA resolution adopting a negative declaration saying not only does it not have an negative environmental impact, it's actually a huge improvement over a derelict site, ripping up the pavement, revegetating it, improving water quality in cooperation with the Homes for Heroes group. And we're just in the process of getting title to that land from the federal government. And this use is one of the permitted uses of that land. So that's basically that. Let's see. So there's lead agency. There's a description of why it makes sense to do this and that it does not have a negative environmental impact. And it says, in summary, after having taken a hard look at the potential environmental impacts associated with the proposed action, that is building a series of water quality treatment basins, the town board concludes that such action will not result in a significant adverse environmental impact. I'll make a motion for that. Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Motion carries. Thank you for the second.
Next, we got to approve
I
AIDS.
think Jerry Batari was the first one out of the box on that.
All right, let's go.
So that's almost $1 million worth of grant money to reduce flooding and improve water quality. And
Okay.
I think the state's spending their money in the right way on that one. Number 6, we have a number of wonderful events coming up. I'll just race through them. The Rockland Bergen Music Festival. Moved from Divney, second from Valentine. All in favor say aye. Aye. Number 7 is the Mostly Music Concert Series in Nyack. I'll make a motion for that. We have a second over here from Dennis. You want to second that one? From Troy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 8 is, this is awarding a transportation contract to get kids to camp this summer with our wonderful, wonderful
The only
Parks
qualified
Department.
Moved.
A second from myself. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Number 9, this is accepting the resignation of our long-serving and dedicated police officer Joe Grunsky, effective June 16th. Thank you for your service, Joe. Jerry, would you like to make a motion for this, being a police officer? Motion from Jerry. Do I hear a second? From Troy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Well,
It's under new
let's
business.
just do it on new business.
Where'd that piece of paper go?
We'll do it on a new business. Let's keep
Someone's
going
gonna have
on.
to find me that
All right,
resolution.
approve Orangetown Police Department purchase of communications equipment.
I'll make a motion for that. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Divney. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 11, oops,
10, but that's okay.
sorry, we just did number 11, which
Yeah, we
was the
missed 10.
police equipment. Number 10 is the Pearl River Elks 5K run. I'll make a motion for that since I love to run. Do I hear a second over here somewhere?
Second.
From Divney. All in favor say aye. The ayes have it. Number 12, Relay for Life.
Moved.
Moved from Divney, second from Troy. All in favor say aye. The ayes have it. Number 13, the Liam Trainer 5K run.
Moved.
Moved from Divney, second from Jerry. All in favor say aye. The ayes have it. Number 14, the much-awaited 2016 Rockland County Irish Fesh. Who will make a motion for this one?
Dennis, why don't you make that?
Dennis, second from Paul Valentine. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Everybody show up down there. Number 15, this is the carnival
going
taking
on right
place
now.
over on Western Highway. I'll make a motion for this. Having
Second.
been in the dunk tank once, never to be repeated, hopefully. Actually, we'll give
Should've
Dennis
learned
the
to swim.
second on this because he was in the dunk tank right after I was. Maybe it was right before I was. All in
Maybe.
favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Number 16, this is the parade in Spark Hill.
Moved.
Motion from Divney, second from myself. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 17 is for registration of a company to do sewer work. Motion from Valentine, second from Divney. All in favor say aye.
All right.
There's one company listed. Number 18 is to have Sylvia Welch work on several different grants for us that are described here. We
I'm
talked
okay
about
with
it
A and
before.
B, but not C. I don't.
The question of C, the reason I put in there, subject to further review in terms of any strings attached to funding for parks, I intend to stand by that. If the town board would like to re-review that, you know, you may find something out until you actually accept the money, you know, you're not bound in any way. So I would like to be able to research that grant and find out more about it.
I'm not for it.
You can get up to $50,000 for park planning and design services. And
Well, here's the thing. We had a public hearing tonight regarding parks and non-residents. Any park that we do from now on, we can set a policy and say it's strictly for non-residents. So I don't want to take any funding. I don't want to apply for any funding. You know, so I don't want C. That's the bottom line. Any new public park the town does, we can dedicate it for residents only. So
Eric has something to say.
I'm gonna shoot him.
You also talked tonight about how we're really hurting for funds in parks to make improvements. Is there any way we can pass that resolution contingent upon the fact that the money doesn't have strings attached?
Yes.
that's the intent of that language, subject to review by the town attorney as to whether this funding would prohibit town park policy limiting non-resident use.
I just don't want to miss a deadline on it. The next time we meet is July. I think that's after the deadline, I believe, for this, so.
But it's for pre-development planning and design, so it wouldn't be coming to you for any of your parks right now, Eric.
I understand, but it would allow us to
No,
at least be
it says for Rockland
investigating
Psychiatric Center.
the development of a new park, which that could be the park, as we discussed, that could be a strictly residents-only park. Again, that's why, again, the contingency is that the money doesn't have strings attached, but it could allow us to move forward with something, or at least take the first step towards doing something that could be very beneficial to the town, I think. So that's just my
You know what,
thought
that's
process.
gonna be part of the negotiation with whoever buys it, RPC. We're gonna, you know, that's how I always saw it going, getting the developer to set aside lands and set aside money, so.
No, I agree that the development needs to pay for any park development over there, absolutely.
All right.
And I don't want to, you know,
Well, let's
we
just
don't want to
vote
go
on
into
it.
anything blindly.
Vote on it.
I'll note also that I had about, I don't know, a provisional commitment from David Carlucci for probably about $200,000 for playgrounds that I backed off on pursuant to finding out exactly what bucket of state money that would come out of and whether it would limit the town's autonomy in any way. So I am very aware of the need to do that, and you know, if you don't find out, then you don't know.
Okay.
And
Let's
I'm
just
just saying,
vote
I
on
think
it.
we should find out. So I'll make a motion to approve this resolution as it is. Anybody want to second that? All right, seeing none, would anybody like to propose a modification of this resolution?
I say we, A and B.
All right, so we have a motion to pass this resolution with the amendment of removal of item C.
Yes.
And
That's
pursuit
made
of
by
the other two
Jerry,
grants.
And I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Number 19 is our budget calendar, and everybody's had a chance to look at it. It's pretty much the same every year.
Yep.
I will note that I didn't put in dates there for passing a law to break the tax cap, because I'm committed personally to submitting a budget that meets the tax cap. I'll note also that it's possible that we may need to add a meeting at some point, and just to maintain awareness of that. This is kind of the roadmap.
Okay.
But if the board needs to schedule a meeting for any reason, especially, I guess, maybe between November 1st and November 15th, if further work is necessary before the
Okay.
last scheduled
Moved.
meeting, I just want you guys to be aware. I sent out an email asking if anybody wanted to just schedule a meeting or leave it open for now. I didn't get any responses back that I recall, so this is the schedule as it stands.
Moved.
Moved from Divany, second from myself. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right, number 20, this is from our finance department, hiring a consultant to review the town's position with regard to employee health insurance and the Affordable Care Act. We discussed it last week. I'll make a motion for this. Do I hear a second? Any discussion necessary? Jerry?
I thought last week we weren't sure, Jeff, whether we needed it this year or not, or there was no penalty this year, correct?
There is no penalty for this year. That being said, we are one of the only municipalities who took this job on themselves. If we hired that out, it's a town our size, it would cost $15,000 to do it. We did it ourselves. There's no penalty, but we need to know if we did it right. And so for this small cost of $2,500, we'll find out for sure that we did it right, which I believe we have. But it's not worth the risk going into next year, because if we don't know we from the get-go that we're doing it right, we can change it now, and then going forward, everything will be right. But for $2,500, again, we're one of the smallest finance departments in the county, and we took this on and saved the town $15,000. But I just want to double check to make sure that everything we've done is right.
Wouldn't we have the opportunity to review it next year when it is going to be?
Well, we will have done it wrong then, and then we will be at risk of fines in 2017.
I'm confused. Isn't this going to review it prior to it going in? And there's no penalty this year?
No, this is reviewing what we did for 2015, and so then they will say, yes, you did it right, or no, we can make corrections and still not get fined. But if we wait till next year to do this same review, then we will get fined if we did it wrong.
I'm for the no fine, so.
Okay.
I'm for it.
And I do want to thank Jeff and his staff for taking on a job that other towns have outsourced from the beginning, which is really putting together the analysis, and I appreciate that. I think you guys do great work. And if you're saying having a little outside audit of that process makes sense, I'm all for it. So we have a motion from Divany, second from Batari. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Number 21 is accepting with regret the retirement of Maureen McGrath from the Justice Court. I'll make a motion for this. Do I hear a second? From Batari. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to new business. This number 22 has to do with the grant that we got for the sludge press at the sewer treatment plant. That was $250,000. Senator Carlucci helped out with that. There's a lot of paperwork associated with it. And fortunately, nobody wants to go visit it anyway. So we're good to go. That was just a joke. I'll make a motion for this. Do I hear a second? From over here? Any
second.
conversation? Nope. All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Number 23, this is pursuant to a decision by the Traffic Advisory Board recommending the installation of a stop sign on the corner of South Greenbush Road near Stevens Way. It describes it in a little more detail there, and that it will be a 6-month police regulation. Do I hear a motion from Dennis Troy, a second from Jerry Batari? All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Number 24, this is setting a date for a public hearing on an amendment to the town code having to do with use and bulk regulations for churches and similar places of worship, schools of general instructions, and any other type of institutions, I guess, or maybe those are just the ones, when they're built, making sure that our zoning code is updated in that respect. I'll make a motion for this. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Changing that to 8:05 on July 19th because we have another hearing on July
Yep.
19th, right?
And I'd like to thank Rob Magrino and John Giardello on this. They've been working on this for the last couple of weeks, and we've tweaked it a couple of times, and it's going to be tweaked a couple more times before we present the final version on it. But they've really been doing a lot of work on this, and I appreciate their hard work.
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely right. Number 25 is accept, receive, file, town clerk's office, several documents. Make a motion for this. Do I hear a second? From Batari, all in favor say aye. The ayes have it. We have another new business item, and because it was a busy night tonight, we'll have the family in a meeting soon, but this is the promotion of Police Officer Terrence Hutmacher off the civil service list to a position of police sergeant, town of Orangetown, effective June 16th. Salary consistent with the labor agreement between the town and the PBA. Jerry, do you want to make a motion for this one? All right, who would like to second this? Second from Dennis Troy. All in favor, say aye. Congratulations to Terry Hutmacher, and continue his service to the town. We also have an audit from our finance department.
Keep it short, you don't have to go over everything.
And Jeff has also, the town board has received some initial comments from the town auditors. The full report will be coming soon, but in the
I'd rather
meantime,
do this with the auditors. No. But I'd rather, no, with them up here, not in closed doors.
why don't we discuss this matter a little bit, and if the board wants to take action on it, they
I mean,
can.
if they're coming in, they should be here to explain it, not without the public input, so people can, I just think that's, you know, not transparent. They should be here. No,
We had scheduled,
that wasn't a
and
public
they're
meeting.
scheduled, when is the auditor scheduled to come in here anyway?
Well, they're not going to, well, we don't have another board meeting till July. We really need to have this resolution passed before, we can't close our books out till June 30th, and then you'd have to get an extension. And just so we know what we're talking about here, Tom, is that this resolution, and this really is...
They should be here,
They
to,
were
in the
here,
public forum,
and they will be.
but after we pass this. To me, that's not how you do business.
This is a plan. Listen, this is, what we're talking about here is over the past 15 years, the general fund has advanced over $6 million to both golf courses. Now, based on the actions of the board to hire a private management company, it looks like on a cash basis, we should be able to pay back in the neighborhood of $450,000 a year of those advances. Now, in terms of how the accounting is treating this, is that our auditors are saying that this is specifically, in order to do an advance, it has to be paid off within a year. That is not how it's being done, and so, or has been done in the past, and so they are saying that you need to basically write off that $6 million in advances and turn it into a loan. A loan can be a multi-year payback period, whereas an advance technically has to be paid back within a year. So this is just getting us more in line with the Government Accounting Standard Board's rationale of how we're supposed to treat what was previously treated as advances, to treat them as a loan. And this just codifies that, but essentially we have to do this. Our auditor is telling us we have to do this, and the comptroller is saying we have to do this. So that is where we are. As we go along, we can change this next year if we see that we're paying this back faster, you know, and so this is a resolution that the auditors can use and put it in our CAFR, that the board is recognizing the $6 million in advances and is making a plan to pay it back. So I will read the resolution since no one in the public has been able to hear it or see it. Resolved, the Town of Orangetown Board recognizes that at the end of 2015, there's an outstanding loan balance of approximately $6 million from the general fund to the Blue Hill and Broad Acres golf courses. Resolved, the town agrees to a 30-year repayment schedule to pay down the entire loan from the general fund to the golf courses. This equates to a minimum payment of $200,000 per year. However, should the golf courses generate better cash profitability, all profits will be used to repay the loan.
As I understand it, Jeff, in very, very, very layperson's terms, right now the $6 million accumulated deficit from the golf courses is essentially a non-spendable element of our fund balance. And for all practical purposes, they essentially want to relabel it as a loan, because in that way, it is more compliant with the accounting standards and more reflective of the town's intent, since we've succeeded in, kind of breaking through to a new period with golf, where there's a possibility of more revenues and lower expenses, instead of going year to year as if they were going to break even and then advancing the money when they don't. From an accounting perspective, we're saying we have a plan, and this is what it is. The $200,000 is a minimum payment, but in any case, basically, we're just switching one encumbrance on our fund balance and kind of changing the way, making it more accurately portrayed within the town books. The money is just as not there in both cases.
Move from Paul.
Second from myself, all in favor say aye. The ayes have it. Well, apparently there's some confusion around that.
Okay.
So,
The whole thing was it should be on the agenda. I've said this to you numerous times. It should be on the agenda. So people.
I would be happy if it had been, but the auditors hadn't provided that, and there was a work to do in getting the best version of that. And I want to thank Jeff and the
Jeff-
auditors can come in and explain more about. It's not just golf. I mean, the whole town independent audit is being wrapped up, and
Okay.
the town board should review that in its entirety.
I'm just saying it should be on the agenda. It should be under new business. It should be out there.
That would be great. It would also be great if the police officer we hired tonight, if that had been done ahead of time as well. But some things take place at the last minute because it's the right thing to do. And other times, it's much better if you have them on the agenda a couple of weeks ahead of time.
Whatever.
Jeff, you want to talk us through the audit?
Sure. The audit for tonight consists of 5 warrants for a total of $787,000. First warrant is 1 voucher for $50 and was for a PERB fee. The second warrant consists of 1 voucher for $575 and was for museum insurance for borrowed items. The third warrant consists of 37 vouchers for $79,000 for utilities. The fourth warrant was 1 voucher for $50,000, which was for general carbon media for the sewer department, odor control. The fifth warrant consists of 246 vouchers for $657,000. Items of interest, 1 and 2 applied golf contracts. Number 5, Capassel, $48,000 for recycling. Number 6, CSEA employee benefits, $26,000 for dental. Number 9, McLaren, $105,000 for the Spark Hill Creek Flood Mitigation Program, and that's coming from a grant. Number 13, SMK Home Builders, $28,000 for escrow releases. And number 14, the comptroller, $37,000 for justice fines.
Moved.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. I did.
About the adjournments, right? I just want to say, being a longtime Pearl River resident, I noticed the first one, Mario Blondie, and I'd read his obituary the other day, and I remember his bar in Pearl River. But I think one thing we should note about him, he's married 71 years to Marie, his wife, and had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and he owned a business in Pearl River. But also, he served our country as a United States Marine in the Marshall Islands, where he received the Purple Heart. And I don't think there's many World War II veterans left. They're dying pretty frequently, but that's a tremendous amount of service to this country, but also to our town as a business owner. So I just want to say that I remember his place. I actually remember him, and just want to give his family my condolences. 2 members within the past 2 weeks from the police department, Jacqueline Chesman, who served over 20 years as the secretary in the Detective Bureau, and police officer Cornelius Neal O'Sullivan, passed away, one last week, one the week before. And I just want to say that Jackie was always a friendly smile in the Detective Bureau. She kind of kept our detectives together with their administrative